as frame generation actually started to get good. I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077 recently, and when I was going through the settings deciding on what I wanted to use, I decided I wanted to try playing with path tracing. So to put into perspective, my specs for my PC are up on the screen now, and I think they're pretty good, but I've never tried to play the game with path tracing. I've always played it with full ray tracing, DLSS turned to quality mode, and frame generation turned off. Now, not too long ago, Nvidia actually updated the DLSS and frame generation models for the RTX 50 and 40 series graphics cards, and color me impressed. I am actually surprised on how good it performs. My first reaction was always get into the game, go into settings, make sure that frame generation is not turned on by default. If it was, I would turn it off. If it wasn't, I would never turn it on. Every time I try to use it in the past, I've always had so many ghosting effects and all these different things. Blurry, smudging, doesn't work. And you know, it's great for increasing that frame rate, you know, the fake frames or whatever, but it doesn't really look that good. If I'm playing a game running at 40 frames, say with DLSS turned on, and then I turn on frame generation, yeah, it might get me up to, you know, 70, 80 frames, but it's still gonna feel like I'm playing on 40 frames. But it'll actually look worse because now there's gonna be a ton of ghosting and weird artifacts happening everywhere, especially with things in motion. Most games I never really played with frame gen on because in my experience, frame generation works the best when you already have a good frame rate. Say 60 frames, you turn on frame gen, it boosts you to like 100 frames. But if you're already at 60, at least for me, I like to get a base 60, and you know, most games I get well over that with my PC. But if it's a super demanding game, I like to go max settings, 4K with 60 frames. If I can't hit that, I'll usually turn down the ray tracing a little bit over turning on frame gen because it just looks not good to me at all. But with this recent update, I actually decided to try and play with frame gen because when I turned it on, for a second I thought it was off when I turned it on. I had to go back into the settings and make sure that it was turned on. Now granted, there is still a little bit that you can see. So using frame gen, I am able to see these artifacting, as you can see in the game. When I'm turning my wheels, even in a standing position, you can see that kind of like smearing going on. And of course, when you're driving, you can still see a tiny silhouette at the front and back of the car, but I feel like this comes and goes as you play. I will say it's not super noticeable when you're actually playing. There are moments where it's a little worse than other times, but overall, I'm actually impressed. It used to be unplayable. It would be the only thing I could see, and I couldn't pay attention to anything happening in the game. I couldn't get into the game because all I saw was these ghosting, these weird artifacts, this weird smearing, and it dragged me out of the game. But now I'm actually impressed, and I want to see how this is put into all the future upcoming titles. Because if this is how frame generation is going forward, I think it's going to start becoming a little bit more feasible. Not that I like to use it still. Most games, I'm probably going to turn it off. This is specifically for Cyberpunk, which is their crown jewel of a game for Nvidia to show off. You know, all these Nvidia displays and all of that always show it off on Cyberpunk. It's really the perfect game with all that neon lighting in the city with the ray tracing. And you know, with frame gen, it works great for having those still shots. You know, you're able to boost your frames, you know, with the new RTX 50 series. You can get up to, what is it, 4 or 6 times frame gen now. And you can really boost your frames like crazy into the hundreds of frames. But of course, I'm sure it doesn't look as good in motion. But I'd really love to know as well. Do you guys play with frame gen? Does it bother you as much in most games, or do you not really care? Do you not really pay attention? For me personally, I'm usually okay with DLSS at quality mode. If I have to lower it to balance, I'd rather lower a different setting, such as ray tracing, which usually does a trick. You know, if there's ray tracing that's turned up all the way, just turn it down. You know, if it's ultra, turn it down to high or whatever. And that usually boosts my frames drastically, and I'm able to either turn off DLSS altogether or keep it at quality mode while getting a nice frame rate. Now, I don't really have to do this for most games. I find a lot of these games run pretty poorly. And yeah, you know, I always like that visual quality, so I always put everything all the way up first and see where I'm at, try to get a baseline going from there. But frame generation is usually the very last thing I will ever think about turning on. Even for slower cinematic games, I could still see artifacting. You know, it could be a very slow movement and you just see, like, say, a hand wave, and you can see like you know, artifacting behind that hand, and it just I don't know why, but I cannot do it. It just looks terrible. It takes me out of the entire experience whenever I see that kind of smearing going on the screen. Same with DLSS. Quality mode, it's okay. I can't really notice much of a difference. You know, if I do a still screenshot between two comparisons of DLSS and no DLSS, I will definitely see some better quality at further draw distances without DLSS turned on. But with quality mode, it's usually okay. Where it gets a problem is if I try to go down to, say, like performance, even balance, sometimes the draw distances start getting really blurry and fuzzy. And here's, I'll be showing some comparisons here, and I'll show the DLSS presets as they pop up here. But as you can see, the lower you go, the more pixelated it starts to look. Around balance, I start to notice it, but at performance, it just like, it takes me out. And that kind of stuff, I'd rather just have less ray tracing, better frames with better clarity. Now, it's not to like completely dunk on ray tracing. I like ray tracing in terms of visual. You know, it obviously looks very pretty, but if it's gonna tank my performance down to 30, 20 frames in games, I'd rather keep it off altogether. Just have the baked lighting or whatever the standard lighting is. It's not gonna look as good, but it's gonna run better. And it's not gonna take me out of the experience as much as having smearing or really low frames. Now, I'd love to know what kind of system specs you guys use and what types of games you play with what settings. Next game on my big radar right now is Crimson Desert, and I just saw some reviews go up. You know, I saw a review particularly from Luke Stevens where he got invited to an event and he was able to play hands-on with the game for about 6 hours, 6.5 hours. And he said he was running at 80 frames that entire time with ultra-wide stretch resolution and settings turned up to ultra and high, which is lovely to hear. They were using the same specs that they were using in the Digital Foundry video, screenshot on the screen here for you guys. I'm super excited for that because I know that this will run even once they have official driver support, day one patch update and all that kind of stuff. And obviously running on my hardware as well. When it comes to Crimson Desert, any performance issues I might have had are definitely not there anymore. But let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed. Please make sure to like, subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And comment down below. Take care, guys.